An October Nintendo Direct, one with new first-party game announcements for the Nintendo Switch. Does this make sense at all? Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Botox Games. Good Monday morning if you're watching this on a Monday morning. We are in such a weird pocket when it comes to being Nintendo fans and Nintendo speculators, we'll say, because there are so many exciting games coming out. Like, as I'm recording this morning, the reviews for Metaphor ReFantazio came out. It has like a 94 on Metacritic, I think, as well as the reviews for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. So these are two like very highly regarded games releasing on PlayStation 5 today. And yeah, on Switch, there's still stuff coming out, right? Like we got Mario Party Jamboree. I actually posted a video on my other channel, It's Amiibo, yesterday talking about all the physical releases coming out in October. And there's quite a few things I'm excited for. But at the same time, the big mega hitters of the month are not coming to Switch, and also there's no news regarding Nintendo at all happening right now. So we're kind of just in this weird, dull period where, I mean, I'm not going to complain, there's always stuff to play, but at the same time, it's like, can you please say something, Nintendo? It's a little quiet recently for my liking. Today, I want to talk about the possibility of an October Nintendo Direct, because I've been seeing a lot of discussion online about this maybe being the case. Maybe we don't get a Switch 2 reveal this month. Maybe Nintendo has an October Direct with first-party Switch games. So today, I want to talk about that and why I really don't think that makes any sense. As much as I want any news from Nintendo, the past 2 weeks in terms of news has been so dry, right? As much as I want news, I think the likelihood of a general Nintendo Direct with like new first-party Switch 1 announcements is extremely low. And here's why. So obviously back in August, we had a partner showcase at the end of the month. That right there is already like a huge red flag. You know, if there was going to be a major Nintendo presentation around this time, it would have just been a September Direct with all the stuff from the partner showcase with a few first-party Nintendo announcements. But that didn't happen. And in conjunction with there being no September Direct this year, it is worth noting that in the June Direct, they already dated a 2025 game, being Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. Now, that is a very boring release. I think for most people, it's cool they're remaking that game or remastering it. But for the most part, I don't think people really care about that. It's not an exciting, mark on the calendar, I think, for most people. However, it is still a release on the calendar. It is still a game with a date in 2025. And while I made a video last week talking about how Nintendo will need to date at least 1 or 2 games for 2025 before the end of 2024, that does not need to be done in a Nintendo Direct. We've seen over the course of the Switch generation that Nintendo's reveal to release kind of announcement cycle, it can be anywhere from, 3 years, 4 years, in some cases, I guess 8 years if you count Metroid Prime 4, to as little as most recently with Emio the Smiling Man. I mean, that was what, like 5 weeks, 6 weeks maybe? So they can announce something in December and it could still release in February. And barring any Switch 2 announcements, right? Like, I think that is what we will probably see. Maybe at the Game Awards, Nintendo announces a new Bravely game that they're publishing from Square Enix. That is something that is, like, realistic, I would say. I believe that the developers over there had been teasing some sort of Bravely news this year. So maybe at the Game Awards, we get a new Bravely game announced, and it is releasing in March, we'll say. Maybe there's no February game next year. And that, from there, pretty much clears the way for some sort of major news not happening until early 2025. I don't think that is the most likely. I do think there will be some sort of Switch 2 announcement this month or this year. I really hope so anyway. Maybe it's copium at this point. But there is a reality where, like, they don't really need to say anything. There's rumors of this new CLO-001 device, this new hardware that, like, tracks your health or something. That's the speculation, right? It has, like, some IR sensors and stuff. That could be announced maybe this month, right? Then nothing happens in November, and then Game Awards, they announce something, and then we don't really see any major news from Nintendo until maybe January or February. I think that's not impossible, given how quickly they will announce and release games now for the Switch. People keep looking at the emptiness of 2025 and saying, oh, it means something has to be soon. And while on the one hand, it does, I would say, help the chances of a Switch 2 reveal, especially when you think about the fact that there was no September Direct, right? Like, it does kind of make it feel like we're in a state where they were kind of preparing for Switch 2. It doesn't necessarily, like, confirm that. Like, they can really do whatever they want. The lack of a February or March game, while it is peculiar for, being this late in the year, it is something that they can figure out before the end of the year. Like, they can announce those games anywhere. And I don't think they would be in a Nintendo Direct because, like I said, if there was going to be a Nintendo Direct, it would have been in September. That is when they do their big Directs. That is when it has always been. And for the past almost a decade now, we have gotten some sort of September Direct. If there was going to be a general Switch 1 focused Nintendo showcase this year, we would have already seen it. It would have already been done. It does not make any sense for them to have done a Partner Showcase Indie World combo and then, you know, a month and a half later do a first-party Switch 1 Direct, right? Especially after Echoes of Wisdom has come out. By the time this happens, maybe we're talking the week before Mario Party, right? So maybe even this week, I guess. But then you're already missing out on 2 major games that you could have marketed in the Direct if it happened in September versus now where you could really only show Mario and Luigi Brothership and Donkey Kong Country Returns. So while I like the idea of a general Direct, right? Like, I want any Nintendo news I can get, I just don't think it really makes any sense whatsoever. With that being said, though, it is an interesting topic of when will there be another Nintendo Direct that has Switch 1 games in it. I know everybody's expecting the Switch 2 to be backwards compatible. I am as well. However, I don't know if they will necessarily show whatever the remaining Switch 1 games are. I don't know if they'll show those in the Switch 2 presentation, right? Like, I can definitely see a reality where, let's say, you know, best case scenario, Switch 2 is announced in a couple of weeks or something, right? We know it's getting announced before March 31st. I think a lot of people have set their eyes on the November 5th investor meeting as kind of like a deadline for it being announced this year. I am the same. If it's not announced by November 5th, honestly, I would say maybe it's not getting announced until March. But let's say we get that revealed this month or this year, whatever, right? They could do another Nintendo Direct in like January or February for Switch 1 games, because I really do believe that while, yes, they might try to do some cross promotion, some cross marketing, right, for stuff like Legends EA, maybe Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, right? Like, I think there will be a lot of games that they don't necessarily use in that way. Specifically, I'm talking about like maybe the next Kirby game, maybe the next Fire Emblem remake that we've been speculating so long. Stuff like F-Zero GX or Metroid Prime 2 and 3, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess HD. There are so many possibilities for Switch 1 games that I do think there will probably be at some point another Switch 1 dedicated presentation. Even if it comes after the Switch 2 is announced, we will still need quite a few games to be announced for 2025. I mean, with how big the Switch install base is, they'd be foolish to not have these games coming out on Switch, right? So I think there is a good chance that, yeah, we see an October reveal for Switch 2. A few months later, we get some sort of maybe January Switch Nintendo Direct Mini. Maybe it's a Nintendo Direct Mini, right? Not a partner showcase, but just like a regular general Mini. We haven't seen one of those in a very long time. And that's where they show, you know, maybe, you know, Metroid Prime 2 and 3 and like another thing, like Fire Emblem 4 Remake. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's all they announced in that Direct. But I think there will be another Switch 1 focused presentation. And then from there, you can still have your big blowout Switch 2 presentation at some point, either once again in January or February. They don't necessarily cancel each other out, because I think we're on the precipice of greatness. That's why I opened this video talking about how weird it feels right now, because we kind of like know that next year is going to be a really, really good year. Unless the Switch 2 doesn't come out until the end of November, in which case maybe it will be a kind of slow year. We know we're going to be getting a lot of games on Switch 2 in year 1. I personally do believe that the Switch 2 will be releasing in the first half of 2025, which means they will likely have a major title basically every month of next year after the Switch 2 comes out. We're talking, okay, January we have Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. Maybe February there is nothing, but then maybe March you get a new Bravely game. That's your Switch 1 game for that month. Then in April you get the Switch 2. Maybe that's where they have the 3D Mario, another like casual game. May you get Metroid Prime 4, but you're gonna have to keep supporting the Switch 1 as well. I think they will have months where they have 2 releases. Maybe you have a month where you get Prime 4 and Fire Emblem or something. Maybe you have a month where you get Switch Sports Resort and a Kirby game. Like, I think 2025, honestly, has the potential to be one of Nintendo's best years ever, just based on, like, how many developers we know have to be ready or should be ready at this point in time. There are so many developers that Nintendo works with, that they own, that just, it feels like it's time to see something from them. Of course, I've talked about Fire Emblem and Kirby. We're talking about Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. I don't know if those two are happening. I've talked about that before. But we can also talk about Camelot. Camelot has never gone this long without releasing a Mario sports game. So we're probably going to get a Mario sports game next year. Honestly, I thought it was going to happen this year, but that obviously didn't pan out. So Mario Sports, I think, is definitely on the docket for next year. Of course, we know the 3D Mario team has been absent for a very long time. Same thing with the Mario Kart team. We don't know what Sakurai is working on. We've heard of rumblings of some Bandai Namco 3D action remaster. A lot of people think that might be Kid Icarus Uprising. There are so many possibilities for games that could be ready for 2025, and I do think, while they're not going to ship all of them, right? Nintendo is no stranger to sitting on games even if they're done. I think we're going to see a lot of stuff next year, especially if the Switch 2 releases in the first half. So to the point, though, the greater point, I do think there will be some sort of Switch 1 focus presentation early in the year, just to kind of lay out the roadmap for that console. And then, yes, they might show them again in a Switch 2 presentation. They'll be like, hey, look at, Fire Emblem 4 Remake, if that does end up releasing next year. But I think they'll want to announce it in a, Switch 1 thing, right? If that makes sense. Either way, though, I really don't think we're that far away from news. I talked about it last Monday, but I do think that, let's say there's no Switch 2 reveal this month. That's the worst case scenario, right? I do think they will still likely have some information on one of the two other games they currently have announced for 2025, being Pokemon Legends EA and being Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I think we see one of them, maybe not necessarily this month exactly, but we see one of those games again this year. I think that is pretty likely. Maybe Metroid Prime 4 could be a Game Awards game. I mean, maybe that could even be like the March game. Maybe we don't see that game in a Direct again. Maybe Metroid Prime 4 Beyond is shown at the Game Awards. That would be a perfect fit for the Game Awards. Nintendo is very hit or miss when they want to play ball with Jeff Keighley, but if you look back, they have a very long history of working with him, but last year, for some reason, they just completely skipped it. But, in 2022, they actually announced Bayonetta Origins there and released it a few months later. Of course, Bayonetta 1 and 2 were also announced there. Bravely Default 2 was announced there. We've had Marvel Ultimate Alliance announced there. So usually it's like their partnered games where they partner with third-party developers and publish for them. However, there is a history of some first-party stuff being there as well, mostly DLC, like the Breath of the Wild Champions Ballad. I believe the Fire Emblem Engage Season Pass was announced at a Game Awards. So, usually they're announcing games that they are publishing from like Square Enix or Platinum, but they have done some first-party stuff. And Metroid Prime 4, I mean, that would just be that's a perfect fit, right? And it's also like, out of like every Nintendo first-party game, Metroid Prime 4 would really make a pop, I think, at the Game Awards. So maybe that's what we see there. Maybe Metroid Prime 4 is a March game. Maybe it's, not crossing on Switch 2, like a lot of people think. Maybe it's just a Switch 1 game releasing in March and then Switch 2 comes out later in the year. I mean, that's definitely possible. And that would clear the way, right? That would clear the way for maybe the Switch 2 is further off than a lot of us think. Maybe it's not announced until March. Maybe we get a regular February Direct for the Switch, which would be crazy. I mean, people were talking about, the June 2023 Direct being the final major Switch Direct. And here we are talking about a February 2025 Direct that might be Switch 1 only. But yeah, either way, I do think we will see at least one of those two games, Metroid Prime 4 or Legends EA. Honestly, I want to say Legends EA, but it's really a coin toss for me, man. I think Prime 4 at the Game Awards really does, that sounds like a good idea. That sounds reasonable. It is the game we've seen more of, right? We've seen much more of Prime 4 than Pokemon at this point. So maybe Metroid comes out in March. Maybe you see Legends EA. Maybe you don't see it until holiday, right? I feel like that's really weird for them to announce it so early. But maybe Prime 4 is first. Maybe we see that at the Game Awards, and then we don't see Pokemon again until Pokemon Day next year. But either way, I would still say one of those games has to have information this year, especially if there is no Switch 2 reveal, if there is no other directs or anything like that. We need information on one of those games, or like I said, maybe a Bravely Third gets announced at the Game Awards or something to help fill in the first quarter of 2025. With that being said, though, hopefully the wait won't be much longer for some sort of Nintendo news. Maybe this week, I think we'll probably get Mario and Luigi Brothership previews this week. Actually, I think there was some sort of event that press got flown to, so we'll probably get some hands-on impressions of Brothership this week. And then of course next week Mario Party Jamboree comes out, so maybe there'll be something more exciting in there in between, right? Maybe later this week they have something. I know there is that new piece of hardware that was filed through the FCC, I believe, so there will be something, I imagine, soon, but maybe it won't be what we want necessarily. Either way, there will be something to talk about. It has just been so dry recently. But until next time, folks, of course, subscribe here for more Nintendo Switch news, reviews, discussions, all that fun stuff. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. How are you feeling about the Nintendo news landscape right now? Do you think there is a chance of an October Direct like a lot of people have been saying? Or do you think it is bogus and we are probably in it for the long haul when it comes to Nintendo news? Hopefully the long haul isn't too long, right? Hopefully it really is just a few more weeks until we see the Switch 2. But as much as I want that to be the case, I am losing optimism by the day. I'm not going to pretend to front. I'm going to be real with you. My optimism for an October reveal is admittedly waning, even though I really hope it happens. But either way, let me know your thoughts. Of course, subscribe here. Follow me on Twitter @BoTalksGames. Check out my other YouTube channel @It'sAmiibo. And until next time, folks, peace.